The black gates of the mansion opened slowly every morning at exactly 6 a.m., and the staff always hurried inside as if the walls themselves were watching them. Everyone who worked there knew one rule: do your job, keep quiet, and never cross paths with the billionaire's fiancée. Her name was Isabella Lawson, and in the city she was known for two things: beauty and fear. No one in the mansion had ever seen her smile. The maids whispered about her in the laundry room. The drivers lowered their voices whenever her name came up. Even the head housekeeper, who had worked in the mansion for 15 years, avoided looking her directly in the eyes. It wasn't just her cold stare. It was the stories. They said a maid once broke a glass in the dining room, and Isabella had her dismissed before the sound of the shards finished echoing. Another time, a gardener trimmed the roses the wrong way, and he was gone before sunset. No arguments, no second chances, just silence. So when a new maid arrived one rainy morning with a small suitcase and hopeful eyes, the entire staff looked at her with quiet pity. Her name was Ada. She was young, maybe 23, and she had traveled all the way from a small village after hearing the billionaire's mansion paid more than any job she could find. She needed the money. Her mother was sick. Her younger brother was still in school. And this job could change everything. But the moment Ada stepped into the staff quarters, the head housekeeper, Mrs. Daniels, pulled her aside. "You're new," the older woman said quietly. "So listen carefully." Ada nodded. Mrs. Daniels leaned closer. "Do your job well. Speak only when spoken to. And if you ever see Miss Isabella coming." She paused. "Walk the other way." Ada blinked. "Is she that bad?" The other maids exchanged nervous looks. One of them whispered, "Worse." Ada forced a small smile, but inside she felt a chill crawl up her spine. Still, she told herself something important. People exaggerate. They always do. Her first few days passed quickly. She cleaned guest rooms, polished marble floors, and arranged flowers in the long hallways of the mansion. The house itself was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings that seemed to touch the sky. Paintings lined the walls. The dining table alone looked like it could feed an entire village. Yet the place felt strangely cold, like happiness had never been invited inside. Ada noticed something else too. The staff moved like shadows. Quick, quiet, careful. Every time high heels echoed down the hallway, everyone disappeared, because those heels meant only one person: Isabella. Ada didn't see her for the first 3 days, but she heard her, the sharp click of her shoes, the cold voice giving orders, the sudden silence that followed wherever she walked. Then on the 4th morning, Ada finally saw her, and the entire hallway froze. Isabella Lawson walked through the corridor wearing a deep red dress, her dark hair perfectly styled, her posture straight and confident. She looked exactly like the magazines described her. Elegant, powerful, untouchable. But it was her eyes that made Ada understand the rumors. They were beautiful, yet empty, like a door that had been locked for years. The maids immediately lowered their heads. No one spoke. No one breathed too loudly. Isabella stopped suddenly. Her gaze moved across the line of workers like a queen inspecting soldiers. Then her eyes landed on Ada, the new girl. Ada felt her heart pound. For a moment, no one moved. Isabella stepped closer. "You're new," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of authority that made people straighten instantly. "Yes, ma'am," Ada replied. "Name?" "Ada." Isabella studied her face for a few seconds. It felt like hours. Then she said something unexpected. "Don't break anything." And she walked away. The staff released a breath they didn't realize they were holding. One of the maids grabbed Ada's arm. "You're lucky." Ada frowned. "Lucky? She spoke to you and didn't fire you." Ada forced a laugh. But that night, while lying on her small bed in the staff quarters, she couldn't stop thinking about Isabella's eyes. They weren't cruel. They were tired. And that confused her. Days turned into weeks. Ada worked harder than anyone else in the mansion. She woke up before sunrise. She stayed late. She never complained. But something kept bothering her. Every time Isabella passed by, Ada noticed the same thing: loneliness. It was hidden carefully behind expensive dresses and cold expressions. But it was there, and Ada couldn't ignore it. One evening, something happened that made the entire mansion panic. A loud crash echoed from the upstairs hallway. The sound of glass shattering. Everyone froze. because the sound came from Isabella's private wing. Mrs. Daniels rushed toward the stairs. "Who was cleaning up there?" she demanded. A maid raised her trembling hand. I was." "Then go fix it before she comes back." The girl shook her head violently. "I can't, please, she'll fire me." The hallway fell silent. No one wanted to go, because Isabella was expected back any minute. Ada looked at the frightened maid. Then she looked upstairs. Without saying anything, she picked up a broom and dustpan. "I'll do it." Every head turned toward her. "Are you crazy?" one maid whispered. But Ada had already started climbing the stairs. The second floor felt different. Quieter, colder. The broken glass was scattered across a marble floor near a tall window. A crystal vase lay in pieces. Ada knelt and began cleaning carefully. Her hands moved quickly, gathering the shards. She had almost finished when she heard it. The sound everyone feared. Click, click, click. High heels. Ada slowly looked up, and there she was. Isabella Lawson stood at the end of the hallway, watching her. The broom froze in Ada's hands. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Isabella's eyes moved to the broken vase, then back to Ada. "Who broke it?" she asked. Ada hesitated. Then she said quietly, "It was an accident." Isabella's gaze sharpened. "I didn't ask that." Ada swallowed. "The maid was cleaning earlier. And why are you the one fixing it?" Ada stood up slowly. Because she was scared. The hallway felt suddenly heavier. Isabella walked closer. Her heels echoed softly. "You knew," she said again. "Yes. Yet you're already breaking rules." Ada's heart pounded, but she didn't look away. "I just didn't think someone should lose their job over a vase." The silence that followed felt dangerous. Isabella stared at her. Long, hard. Then she said something no one expected. "You're either brave or very foolish." Ada said nothing. Isabella turned toward her bedroom door. Before stepping inside, she paused and said something quietly. "Finish cleaning." Then she disappeared behind the door. Downstairs, the staff waited nervously. When Ada returned, everyone rushed toward her. "What happened?" Did she shout? "Are you fired?" Ada shook her head. "No." The room fell silent. Because in that mansion, no one had ever walked into Isabella Lawson's hallway and returned unharmed. And without realizing it, Ada had just done something unexpected, something that would slowly begin to change everything. But what Ada didn't know yet was that Isabella Lawson had been watching her long after she left. And for the first time in years, the feared fiancée of the billionaire was thinking about a maid who wasn't afraid of her. And that small moment was about to open a secret inside the mansion that no one was prepared for. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories like this. Because what Ada was about to discover inside that mansion would shock everyone, even the billionaire himself. And the truth about Isabella Lawson was far darker than anyone imagined. But Ada was about to find out. Very soon, Ada tried to return to her normal routine the next morning, but the mansion didn't feel the same anymore. Something had changed. Every maid who passed her whispered quietly, "That's the girl who spoke to Miss Isabella. She's lucky to still be here." Ada tried to ignore them and focused on polishing the long dining table. But even Mrs. Daniels kept glancing at her like she was expecting trouble. By midday, the tension in the mansion had grown thicker. Because something unusual had happened. Isabella Lawson had asked a question, and it shocked everyone. Mrs. Daniels walked quickly into the staff kitchen, her face tight with confusion. "She asked about the new maid," she said. The room went silent. Ada slowly looked up. "Me?" Mrs. Daniels nodded slowly. "She asked if you were still working here." The other maids stared at Ada like she had just walked through fire. "What did you tell her?" one whispered. Mrs. Daniels crossed her arms. "I told her yes." Ada's stomach tightened. Why would Isabella ask about her? People like Isabella Lawson didn't think about people like her. At least that's what Ada believed. But the mansion had its own secrets. And Isabella Lawson had been thinking about Ada since the moment she saw her cleaning the broken glass. Later that evening, Ada was assigned to deliver fresh towels to the guest wing upstairs. Normally, she would have finished quickly and left, but as she walked past Isabella's private hallway, she noticed something strange. The door to Isabella's room was slightly open. Ada stopped. She had never seen that door open before. Curiosity pulled her closer. Inside the room, the lights were dim. Ada could see a large desk, elegant furniture, and a balcony overlooking the city. But what caught her attention wasn't the luxury. It was the sound. Someone was crying. Soft. Broken. Ada froze. Because that voice belonged to Isabella. The woman everyone feared. The woman who looked like she had no emotions at all. Ada's heart beat faster. She should leave. She knew that. But something about the sadness in that voice made her stay. Then Isabella spoke quietly, her voice trembling. I tried. I really tried. Ada couldn't hear the other side of the conversation. But Isabella continued. I can't do this anymore. A long silence followed. Then the sound of something hitting the desk. When Isabella spoke again, her voice had hardened. Fine. The call ended. Ada quickly stepped away from the door just as it suddenly opened. Isabella stood there. Their eyes met instantly. Ada felt her heart drop. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Isabella looked at the towels in Ada's hands. You're lost, she said coldly. No, ma'am. Ada replied quickly. I was delivering towels. Isabella studied her carefully, and Ada wondered if she had heard her standing there. But Isabella simply stepped aside. Put them inside. Ada hesitated. No maid had ever entered Isabella's room before. Now, Isabella said calmly. Ada walked inside slowly. The room was beautiful, but strangely empty. There were expensive decorations everywhere, yet nothing felt personal. No photographs, no memories, just perfection. Ada placed the towels neatly on a chair. As she turned to leave, her eyes accidentally landed on something sitting on the desk. A photograph. It was slightly hidden under a folder. In the picture, Isabella looked younger, and she was smiling. Beside her stood a man Ada recognized immediately. The billionaire himself, Daniel Carter. But what surprised Ada wasn't the man. It was the smile on Isabella's face. It looked real, warm, alive. Nothing like the cold woman she had become. Don't touch anything. Isabella's voice snapped Ada out of her thoughts. Ada quickly stepped back. I'm sorry. She moved toward the door, but before she could leave, Isabella spoke again. Why did you clean the glass that night? Ada turned slowly. Because someone had to. That wasn't your responsibility. Ada shrugged slightly. I didn't think it mattered whose job it was. Isabella watched her carefully. You don't seem afraid. Ada hesitated before answering honestly. I was. Ada nodded. But now I think people misunderstand you. The air in the room became very still. Isabella's eyes narrowed slightly. Be careful with assumptions. Ada lowered her gaze. I'm sorry. She stepped out of the room and closed the door gently. But the conversation stayed in Isabella's mind long after Ada left. Because no one had spoken to her like that in years. Most people feared her. Others avoided her. But this maid, she spoke like Isabella was human. And that unsettled her more than anything. Downstairs, the staff gathered again. Ada told them nothing about what happened in the room. But rumors spread quickly in the mansion. By the next day, everyone was whispering. The new maid went into Miss Isabella's room. That's impossible. Maybe she's already fired. But Ada was still there, working quietly. Days passed again. Then something happened that changed everything. One afternoon, the billionaire himself arrived earlier than expected. Daniel Carter's presence always caused excitement among the staff. He was powerful, wealthy, and surprisingly kind to the workers. But there was something strange about his relationship with Isabella. They rarely appeared together, and when they did, their conversations felt distant. That evening, Ada was dusting the large living room when she overheard raised voices from the study. The door wasn't fully closed. Daniel's voice sounded frustrated. This wedding is in 2 months, Isabella. And Isabella replied coldly. And you still look like you hate the idea. A long silence followed. Then Isabella laughed quietly. Maybe I do. Ada's hands froze. Daniel sighed heavily. We used to love each other. Isabella's voice softened slightly. That was a long time ago. Then why are we still doing this? Another silence filled the room. Finally, Isabella said something quietly. Because it's easier than explaining the truth. Ada felt chills run down her arms. What truth? But before she could hear more, footsteps approached. Ada quickly walked away from the door. Later that night, as Ada prepared to sleep, she couldn't stop thinking about everything she had seen. The crying, the photograph, the strange conversation. Something wasn't right. The woman everyone feared wasn't cruel. She was hiding something painful, and Ada couldn't stop wondering what it was. But what Ada didn't realize was that someone else in the mansion had started watching her closely. Someone who didn't like the attention she was getting. Someone who believed the new maid was getting too close to Isabella Lawson. And that person had already begun planning a way to get Ada out of the mansion. For good. Because inside that beautiful house, secrets were everywhere. And the one Ada was about to uncover could destroy the billionaire's wedding forever. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next part. Because what Ada discovers next inside the mansion will shock everyone, even Isabella herself. And it will all begin with a single mistake that no one expected. The following morning began like every other day in a mansion. But Ada felt a strange tension in the air the moment she stepped into the hallway. Two maids stopped whispering the second they saw her. The gardener avoided eye contact. Even Mrs. Daniels seemed unusually quiet. Something was wrong. Ada was about to ask when the sharp voice of another maid, Clara, cut through the silence. Well, look who's here. Clara had worked in the mansion longer than most of the staff. She was beautiful, confident, and known for being extremely close to Mrs. Daniels. But she had never liked Ada. Not from the beginning. Ada forced a polite smile. Good morning. Clara crossed her arms. I heard you like going where you're not supposed to. Ada immediately understood what she meant. The towels, Ada explained calmly. Miss Isabella told me to bring them in. Clara let out a short laugh. Of course she did. The tone in her voice carried something sharp. Jealousy. But Ada didn't respond. She had learned that silence often avoided unnecessary trouble. Still, Clara watched her with narrowed eyes. Because in this mansion, attention from Isabella Lawson meant power. And Clara had spent years trying to gain it. Now a new maid had it without even trying. And she didn't like that. Later that afternoon, Ada was cleaning the large staircase when something unusual happened. Isabella appeared again. But this time, she stopped directly in front of Ada. The entire hallway froze. Every staff member immediately lowered their heads. Isabella spoke calmly. You. Ada looked up. Yes, ma'am. I need tea. Ada nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Daniels immediately stepped forward. I can bring it, Miss Isabella. But Isabella didn't even look at her. I asked her. Ada felt dozens of eyes suddenly staring at her. Of course, she said quietly. A few minutes later, Ada carried a tray of tea toward Isabella's private study. Her hands were steady, but her mind raced with questions. Why did Isabella keep choosing her? She knocked softly. Come in. Ada entered carefully and placed the tray on the table. Isabella was standing by the window, staring out at the city skyline. For a moment, she didn't turn around. Then she asked something unexpected. How long have you been working here? 3 weeks. Isabella nodded slightly. And you still haven't run away. Ada almost smiled. I need the job. Isabella finally turned around. Her eyes studied Ada carefully. Most people leave within a week. Ada hesitated before asking quietly. Why? Isabella didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the chair and sat down slowly. Because fear spreads faster than truth. Ada frowned slightly. I don't understand. Isabella looked at the teacup in her hands. Then she said something that shocked Ada. People think I enjoy being cruel. Her voice sounded tired. But sometimes people become what others expect them to be. Ada felt her chest tighten. This was the first time Isabella had spoken openly. Do you? Ada asked softly. Enjoy it. Isabella looked up. For the first time, there was something vulnerable in her eyes. No. Silence filled the room. Ada didn't know what to say. But Isabella spoke again. You're curious. Ada didn't deny it. Yes. Curiosity is dangerous in this house. Ada smiled slightly. I think silence is worse. For a moment, Isabella almost smiled. Almost. Then she suddenly stood. That will be all. Ada nodded and turned toward the door. But just as she reached it, Isabella said something quietly. You remind me of someone. Ada turned. Who? But Isabella had already looked away. Someone who used to believe people could change. Ada left the room with even more questions than before. But downstairs, trouble was already waiting. Clara was standing near the staff entrance with 2 other maids. And the moment Ada walked in, Clara spoke loudly. Well, look who it is again. Ada sighed quietly. I'm busy, Clara. Clara stepped closer. You think you're special now. Ada stayed calm. I never said that. But Miss Isabella keeps calling you. Ada shrugged. I just do my job. Clara leaned closer. lowering her voice. Be careful. Why? Clara smiled coldly. Because people who get too close to powerful families usually disappear quietly. Ada didn't respond, but something about Clara's warning felt strange. Later that evening, something shocking happened. The mansion erupted into chaos. Mrs. Daniels rushed through the hallway shouting, "Who cleaned Miss Isabella's jewelry room today?" Everyone froze. No one answered. Clara stepped forward slowly. "I think the new maid did." Every head turned toward Ada. Ada blinked in confusion. "What?" Mrs. Daniels walked toward her quickly. "The diamond bracelet is missing." The room exploded with whispers. "That bracelet costs more than this entire house. Someone will be fired." Mrs. Daniels looked directly at Ada. "You were seen entering that hallway earlier." Ada's heart dropped. "I was delivering tea." Clara spoke again. "And maybe you delivered something else." The accusation hung heavily in the air. Ada felt anger rise in her chest. "I didn't steal anything." But the damage was already done. Moments later, Isabella herself walked into the room. The hallway immediately fell silent. Mrs. Daniels explained everything quickly. "The bracelet is gone." Isabella's eyes moved slowly across the staff. Then they stopped on Ada. "You." Ada stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am." "You were near the room." "Yes." "Did you take it?" The question felt like a knife. Ada lifted her chin. "No." The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, Isabella said something unexpected. "Search her room." Ada nodded. "You can search anywhere." Minutes later, two maids returned from the staff quarters. And everyone gasped, because in Ada's small drawer, they found a missing diamond bracelet. The room exploded with whispers. Clara covered her mouth dramatically. "I can't believe it." Ada stared at the bracelet in disbelief. "That's not mine." Mrs. Daniels shook her head. "It was in your room." Ada's heart raced. Someone had planted it. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, and they stopped on Clara. Clara looked away instantly. Isabella picked up the bracelet calmly. Her face revealed nothing. Then she looked directly at Ada. "You're fired." The words hit the room like thunder. Ada felt the ground disappear under her feet. "But I didn't." Isabella raised her hand. "Enough." Mrs. Daniels stepped forward. "You need to pack your things immediately." The other maids watched silently, some with pity, others with satisfaction. Ada felt tears burn behind her eyes. Not because she lost a job, but because she knew the truth. Someone had framed her. As she walked slowly toward the staff quarters, Clara leaned close and whispered, "I warned you." Ada stopped. "Why?" Clara smiled softly. "Because this house doesn't need heroes." Ada packed her small suitcase in silence. When she stepped outside the gates of the mansion that night, the rain had already started falling. 3 weeks. That was all it took for everything to fall apart. But inside the mansion, Isabella Lawson stood alone in her room, staring at the bracelet in her hand. Her eyes were cold, thoughtful, because something about this situation didn't make sense. And Isabella Lawson was many things. But she was not foolish. She walked slowly toward her desk and pressed a button on the intercom. "Send Clara to my office." Her voice was calm, but there was something dangerous hidden beneath it, because the feared fiancé of the billionaire had just begun asking questions. And when Isabella Lawson started looking for the truth, someone in that mansion was about to regret everything. The rain continued pouring outside the mansion as Ada stood by the large iron gate, her small suitcase resting beside her feet. She stared back at the massive house one last time. 3 weeks ago, she had walked through those gates with hope. Now she was leaving with humiliation. A security guard opened the gate slowly. "You should go before it gets worse," he said quietly. Ada nodded, but just as she picked up her suitcase, headlights suddenly flashed behind her. A car pulled up quickly. The gate guard straightened, because only one person used that car. The door opened, and Isabella Lawson stepped out into the rain. Ada froze. She didn't expect to see her again. Isabella walked toward her slowly, her heels tapping against the wet pavement. The security guard quickly stepped aside. Ada tightened her grip on the suitcase. "Miss Isabella." "I didn't." "Stop," Isabella said calmly. Ada fell silent. For a moment, the rain was the only sound between them. Then Isabella spoke again. "Did you steal the bracelet?" Ada met her eyes without hesitation. "No." Isabella studied her face carefully, long enough to make Ada's heart pound. Then Isabella turned toward the gate guard. Open the gate again. The guard hesitated. But ma'am, now. The gate slowly opened. Ada frowned. I don't understand. Isabella looked at her. Neither do I. Ada blinked. What? Isabella crossed her arms. You were framed. Ada's breath caught. I knew it. Isabella nodded slightly. I know. Ada looked shocked. Then why did you fire me? Isabella's expression remained calm. Because the person who framed you needed to believe it worked. Ada stared at her. The rain continued falling around them. Then why are you here? Isabella looked back at the mansion. Because the truth always hides where people think it's safe. Ada slowly realized something. You knew. Isabella nodded once. I had my suspicions. Ada felt hope return her chest. So what happens now? Isabella's eyes darkened slightly. Now we wait. Inside the mansion, Clara walked nervously toward Isabella's office. She had been called unexpectedly, but she tried to stay calm. After all, Ada was gone. Everything had worked perfectly. She knocked on the door. Come in. Clara stepped inside confidently. Miss Isabella, you wanted to see me? Isabella sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable. Yes. Clara smiled politely. I'm glad we resolved the bracelet situation. Stealing is unacceptable. Isabella leaned back slightly. Yes. Clara relaxed. Then Isabella pressed a button on her desk. The office door suddenly opened. Clara turned around, and her face went pale, because Ada walked inside, alive, standing beside Isabella. Clara's smile vanished instantly. What is she doing here? Isabella's voice remained calm. Watching. Clara's heart began to race. I don't understand. Isabella placed the diamond bracelet on the desk. Interesting thing about expensive jewelry, she said slowly. They're easy to track. Clara's hands trembled slightly. I'm sure they are. Isabella looked directly at her. And even easier to trace when someone touches them. Clara's voice grew tight. Are you accusing me of something? Isabella pressed another button. A large screen on the wall turned on. Security footage appeared. Clara's eyes widened. The video clearly showed her entering the staff quarters earlier that afternoon, opening Ada's drawer, placing the bracelet inside. The room went completely silent. Clara's face drained of color. That's not what it looks like. Isabella tilted her head slightly. No. Clara's breathing became uneven. I was just checking. Enough. Isabella's voice suddenly turned sharp. For the first time, Clara saw the real power behind the woman everyone feared. You framed an innocent person. Clara panicked. She was getting too close. Ada frowned. Too close to what? Clara's eyes darted between them. To you, she shouted at Isabella. She was changing things. Isabella's expression hardened. And that threatened you? Clara shook her head desperately. You don't understand. I worked here for years. I deserved your trust. Isabella's voice became cold. And you destroyed it. 2 security guards stepped into the room. Clara's knees nearly gave out. Wait, please. I'll leave quietly. Isabella didn't move. See that you do. Clara was escorted out of the office, her protests fading down the hallway. The room fell silent again. Ada looked at Isabella slowly. You knew all along. Isabella exhaled softly. I suspected. Ada sat down slowly, still processing everything. Why didn't you just check the cameras immediately? Isabella looked toward the window. Because sometimes the truth reveals more when people think they've already won. Ada couldn't help smiling slightly. You're smarter than everyone says. Isabella raised an eyebrow. And what do they say? That you're heartless. For the first time, Isabella actually smiled. Just a little. Later that evening, the billionaire himself returned home. Daniel Carter walked into the living room and immediately noticed the change. The tension in the mansion had disappeared. He looked at Isabella. You seem different. Isabella glanced at Ada, standing nearby. Perhaps. Daniel frowned. And who is this? Ada straightened slightly. I'm Ada, sir. Daniel nodded politely. Then he turned to Isabella. She's new. Isabella shook her head. No. Daniel waited. Isabella looked at Ada for a moment before speaking. She's the first honest person this house has seen in a long time. Ada felt embarrassed. Daniel chuckled. That's rare around billionaires. The 3 of them shared a brief laugh. But something deeper had already changed. In the weeks that followed, the mansion slowly transformed. The staff stopped whispering in fear. People smiled again. And Isabella Lawson, The woman everyone once feared was no longer alone, because sometimes the smallest act of courage can change the coldest heart. All it took was one maid who wasn't afraid to do something unexpected. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves powerful stories like this. Also comment below, do you think Ada was brave or just lucky? Because sometimes in life, one brave decision can change everything.